Well, it's not the perfect day to go looking for lavender. It's fairly overcast and chilly, windy. But here we are. We're on a path that goes between Cala del Barca and Portichol. I've seen some lavender round about that's in flower, and I think I can remember finding some a year ago in a little gully along this path. So we'll see if we have success today. All paths lead to the sea, but they ain't all easy. You may find an easy path, but it won't be free. So I'll walk and I'll climb and I'll scrape till I get weary, just to find what's waiting there for me. But what other way is there for it to be? I think we're on the road here to my lavender gathering place. But one can easily make a mistake in these places. You know, I came here a year ago, so maybe this is the road, maybe it isn't. If not, we'll look again. Now, this may not look like much, but you see where the pine tree has been cut? There is a droplet of pine resin coming from the wound. And in fact, if you look closely, the whole wounds are covered in a layer of pine resin. And I'm going to scrape this off and put it into a pot. I have a pot here with already some pine resin in, which a friend of mine kindly scraped off one of his pine trees. And the reason I'm collecting it is because pine resin is just as good as propolis if you have a sore throat in the winter, suffering from colds, sore throats. Pine resin will, well, it has antimicrobial properties. It will kill the virus that's causing your sore throat, help to stimulate your own immune system to kill that virus. You can simply put a tiny bit of resin in your mouth and let it slowly dissolve. You'll find it sticks a bit to your teeth, but that doesn't matter, it will eventually dissolve and go down, and it will help you get rid of that nasty sore throat. Now all dead ends are just our limitations, no way to fly way down that wild valley. Well, I'm sitting here to voice my incantations. Cicadas scream hypnotic from tree to tree. But what other way is there for it to be? Well, now I think I've arrived at the Valley of the Lavender. Can't see any lavender around at the moment, but we'll have a look around and see what we find. What other way is there for it to be? And here we are. Lavender. And look, it's all around. There's another bush here and another over here, and I'm sure we'll find more. Now, lavender is one of those plants which is absolutely useful in 2 or 3 respects. First of all, it has a sort of ambivalent character. 2 aspects which are at the same time opposite but complementary. On the one hand, it's a very good relaxant. So if you are suffering from stress or anxiety, or you can't sleep, there's a good chance lavender will help you. But on the other hand, if you're feeling dull, lack of enthusiasm, lack of energy, then it will also help you. It has the capacity to enthuse you, stimulate you, give you that energy that is lacking. So it's a very wonderful plant. Several plants do this. They give you what you need at the time you need it. So you can't say this plant does that, full stop. No, very often you can say this plant will provide to you the substances or the energies that you can make use of. The rest is up to your body. And the third use of lavender, which is very useful, is it's digestive. It stimulates the production of bile flow, which you need for the digestion of fats, and it will generally, as an aromatic herb, it will generally help a slow, sluggish digestion. So those are the use of lavender. This form of lavender is actually Lavender dentata. The more common form from which they make essential oils is Lavender angustifolia, which is stronger. This is weaker, but it's what we have in Ibiza, and so it's what we will use. Let's just zoom in on one of the flowers, if we can. Well, it's not so easy to get them in focus, but perhaps you can see the tufted petals on top of the flower head. That's typical of Lavender dentata, as are the leaves, which actually give them their name. Perhaps you can see just that the leaves have ribbings going from the midrib to the side, and the flower gets its name from these, dentata, because the leaves are dentated, so therefore comes the name. Lavender is a member of the mint family. So what we ought to find in a member of the mint family are square stems. Now if I took a stem, this one, and I cut it, I took a section of it, and I looked at it, I'd find it was square, not round. Secondly, mint family plants have leaves that are opposite. Now it's a bit difficult to see because they're all sort of clumped together, but in a sort of a whirl. But if they were more separated, you would be able to see that they grow opposite each other. They're not one leaf at one point and another leaf at another point up the stem. They're all at the same point and they are opposite each other. And the third characteristic of plants of the mint family is that the flowers are not symmetrical one way, but if we turn them the other way and we draw a line down the middle, they are roughly symmetrical, at least in theory. So they are bilaterally symmetrical, but they're not completely regular. So that's the mint family. So the idea when picking mint is to just take the first 10 centimeters of the flowering head with some leaves, like that, just about that much, yeah, and we're going to put it into our bag. Unfortunately, I haven't got a sack bag, a sacking bag. I've just got a plastic bag, but that will be addressed. At the moment, that's just the way it is. The idea here is not to take too many flowering heads from the same plant, because the plant needs them. It needs them to propagate, it needs them to be pollinated so that it can reproduce. So we're just going to take a few of these from each plant, and then move on to the next plant. If we take them all, this plant won't be able to reproduce. So its genes will then be lost to the world, and we will have reduced biodiversity. We're not going to do that. We're going to be very sparing and respectful. That's all I'm going to take from this plant, and I'm also going to say a little thank you to the plant. A little silent thank you to the plant and the land that produced the plant, and the world on which the land stands which produced the plant, and the universe which produced all this wonder. And then we'll move on to another plant. Now here there's a little cave. In fact, it's a tunnel which goes through and down the ravine there. Oh, it just goes about 10 yards under these rocks here, but I have to be careful because there lives a troll, so you must be very quiet. So that's the idea, that's what we're going to do. We're going to pick enough of these lavender flower heads to make about, I guess, about a litre of tincture. And well, I'll be explaining how to do that later on. Now, I'm just going to turn you round so that you can see Cala del Barca down there. Beautiful, isn't it? I've tried to get down this way, but it ends in a gully with a drop, which one couldn't attempt to get down, at least without a 10-metre rope, and I'm not going to do that. This is my trusty walking stick, named Pera, after his father, who's also called Pera. Look how beautiful. With this little branch here, just right for the thumb to go under, or this one here. I prefer that one there, makes a nice solid grip. And the two little points at the end here also make for good grip on the ground. Unfortunately, one of them's got a bit chipped, but it's still good. So, Pera and I go on a lot of adventures together. We're approaching Wild Gully. Soon we won't be able to go any further, but I'll just lead you down. The clattering, that's Pera on the rocks. Pera the walking stick. So this, obviously, after the rains, if we ever get torrential rains, which happens sometimes, this would all be a raging torrent. You wouldn't be able to get down here. At the moment it's dry as a bone. So, one foot after the other. See, the vegetation is quite lush in here because these gullies, they are, you know, a little bit humid. They have their own microclimate, so there's all kinds of green plants down here. And on we go, just a little further. And then still just a little further down the next step of the way. And there we are. That's it. That's as far as we go. Without a rope. Just come over here to see if we can see a bit better. Yeah, well that's about 10 meters down. So that's not going to be on the agenda. And then we look out over Cala d'Albarca. We're on the eastern side. That headland that you can see over there, that's Cap des Mossons, which I've written about several times. I can hear high above a family passing by on the footpath that leads from Cala d'Albarca towards Portinach. And I hear yada 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 yada. Now, why come out into the wilderness? Why come to a beautiful spot like this? So silent, so beautiful, where you can experience the mystery of the universe all around you. Now why focus your attention to the internal workings of your social group at that moment? Yada 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 yada. You could do that at any time, in any place. So I'll just wait for them to pass by. Well, we stumbled across a foreign land. This is the land of the cactuses, or cacti. And they're just growing all over this southern facing hillside here. Those big leaves just soaking up the sun when it comes out, even when it doesn't. I must say you have to be very careful with your footwork around here, because these leaves, these rotten leaves, when they drop off and they lie on the ground here like this, they're extremely slippery. If you put your foot on something like that, or something like this, then you would fly. Hopefully not into cactus, and hopefully not downhill there. But I've just spotted over there another lovely bush of lavender, so watching where I put my feet very carefully, we're going to go over there and I'm going to pick some more lavender. Maybe this will be the last I need. Well, that over there is the sort of gully or cave structure that we walked down. Now I'm on the other side of the valley, and as I say, in a pretty alien landscape with all these cacti, but an abundance of what I came looking for, lavender. I think I got my fill, while leaving enough for the plant to grow and propagate. So now we have to make our way on this side up through this scrub somehow, but I'm used to finding ways. I'll find a way up to the top and then I'll be on my way home. So this is where we were, looking over to Cala del Barca, which you can't see because of that rocky outcrop. But let me take you round and over to the other side of this ridge, and you can see what's beyond. And if you observe on the right there, there is a sort of tower of rock. Down below on the right there's a bay, and on the right side of the bay there's an outcrop of rock. It's actually quite difficult to get to, but you can. There's a massive hole in the rock that goes down to the sea, and under the sea there's a tunnel which comes into this hole. Light comes through the tunnel, and therefore the hole is called La Cueva de la Luz. If I then bring the camera around, you can see how dramatic is the cliffside here. Going up, going down, goes a long way down. And again, all these lovely wildflowers on the side of the cliff. I can see rosemary, I can see lavender, I can see this little yellow flower on the right. I believe it's called olivardo. What is harder, rock or air? Rock or water? Look how these rocks have been eroded over time. Those edges are knife sharp. Those points are spear sharp. Those holes are deep. This has all been done by erosion over time. So it's a calm day today, but when the storms come, as they do, these rocks are battered by wind and rain, and a little bit is taken off each time. Multiply by 1,000 years, multiply by 10,000 years, and you get rocks like this. The power of the elements is absolutely impressive. So there we are, that is the bay where La Cueva de la Luz is found on the right hand side. You can see the tower of rock, Little Bird's tower of rock on the left. I'm not sure which one it was, the higher one or the lower one. Look how the lower one has a hole in it, if you can just see that. And let's just bring you along the coast here. Look at that wild coast. Just look at it. What a wilderness. And the dark sky above. Absolutely fantastic. And here is such a sweet little lavender plant. I'm not touching it. I'm not taking even one sprig. It's beautiful. Just look at that. Lavandula dentata. So you have your lavender. How are you going to use it? You can use it fresh or dry. If you've got a large quantity, you're going to want to dry it, and you do that in a dry, well aerated place out of direct sunlight. Either you can lay it out on a sheet, making sure each sprig doesn't cover another sprig so that air can circulate well between them, or you can tie your lavender up in bunches like this. I've got about 10 sprigs here tied with a string at the base. Some people would actually like to tie lightly a paper bag around those lavender heads, or else put a tray or a sheet under the hanging lavender in order to catch any small flower parts that might fall off. You need to leave your drying lavender for 3 or 4 weeks until the flowers will crumble easily between your fingers. The dried lavender is then stored in a well-sealed jar in a cool, dark, dry place. You can use your lavender in an infusion or in a tincture. I'm going to explain both ways. The infusion is the easiest. If you're using fresh lavender, you simply put a few sprigs into a cup, pour on boiling water, leave it for 10 minutes, allow it to cool, and then it's ready to drink. If you're using dried lavender, you'll need to use a teaspoonful in a cup. You pour on boiling water, you let it rest for 10 minutes,
strain it, allow it to cool, and then it's ready to drink. The tincture method is slightly more complicated, but not too much. If it's fresh lavender you're using, you're going to need to buy some of this. This is 95% alcohol. You can buy this online or perhaps in a liquor store. Please don't use the 95% alcohol you can buy at the chemist for disinfecting the skin, small wounds and such like, because that contains a component which is toxic. It's not meant to be drunk. Don't drink it. If you're using dried lavender, you use a spirit. And I use vodka. I think Moskovskaya should pay me a commission, the amount of their vodka I'm using at the moment. But it doesn't have to be this brand. This is 38% alcohol. And the difference is this. A dried herb doesn't contain much water. And so you're going to need to make that up with the water content of your alcohol. So vodka containing 62% water will make that water content up in the tincture. If it's a fresh herb contains a lot of water, so you don't need much water in your alcohol, so you use 95% alcohol. Hope that makes sense. If it doesn't matter, just follow those instructions. So you take your herb, you chop it up fine, the finer the better, you put it in a sealable jar. Now this jar has a rubber seal around the lid here. It has to be well sealable because a couple of times a week you're going to need to shake your tincture to stir it up, so you don't want any leaking out. So you've got your herb in the jar. You pack it down a little, not too much, but just sort of make it quite compact, and you pour on your alcohol. And you need to cover the herb well with the alcohol. It needs to be completely covered so that the herb isn't exposed to the air. Now some of the pieces of herb will float, but they will eventually absorb liquid and tend to sink again. Once you've got your herb alcohol mixed in the jar, close the jar and store it. You store it again in a cool, dark, dry place, and you need to leave it for a minimum of 3 weeks. I leave mine for 6 usually. After that, it's ready to be used. You can strain it, put it into bottles for storage. Again, the bottle needs to be well sealed and kept in a cool, dark, dry place. Once you want to use it, you'll need to decant it into smaller bottles. This stuff isn't taken by the glassful, it's taken by the teaspoonful or even drops. So you'll need smaller bottles. You can buy dropper bottles online or perhaps at the chemist shop. I'm not going to explain dosages here. You can read about dosages and a lot of other practical matters on my website, which is Mediterranean Healing Herbs, all one word, .wordpress, all one word, .com. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video and I hope you've learned something, and perhaps I'll see you next time. Bye.